What is up everybody, my name is Tyler Potts, and in this video we're going to be creating a NodeJS, Express and Mongo API, a RESTful API to be exact, a CRUD system. The example we're going to be using is a user management system, so like you would, let's say like area where you would manage your user, so you would have a user, you'd have your forename, your surname, the team you're a part of. So let's say if it's a software company, you'd have your designers, your developers or software engineers, your managers and your project managers, and so on and so forth, stuff like that. So you can manage those, and let's say it's somewhere, we're not going to create all these functionalities, but let's say it would be somewhere where you manage who signs in, they sign into it, and then you give them their username and their password and stuff, and then they would be able to, let's say, book holiday, for example, and stuff like that. So we're going to create a RESTful API just to create new users, update users, retrieve the users, and also delete users. So without further ado, let's crack on. So what we need to do first before doing this is, first off, you need to install NodeJS. And to get NodeJS, you need to go to nodejs.org, hit either the latest or the recommended. I have the recommended version, and it will download an installer. You just run through the installer. It's super simple, and you can crack on with Node. It will also install Node Package Manager, which is something else we will need. After you've got that, you just need to know about Express. You can head over to expressjs.com and learn about it here. It's very simple. I'm going to be teaching you how to use it in this video, and this is just one of the topics we'll be learning. Another one is Mongoose, and Mongoose is a MongoDB ODM, I believe they call it, or actually elegant MongoDB object modeling for Node. So what this does is allow you to add types to your model. So you would create structures for your MongoDB collections, for example. So let's close that. And the last thing we're going to be needing, because we're not going to be creating a front-end API or a front-end system where we connect to the API, we're going to be using Postman to actually basically test our API system. So what Postman does is allow you to send requests and receive responses through Postman, which is perfect because in Express all we do is send requests and retrieve responses, or we get requests and we send responses. You know what I'm saying, you're about to find out anyway. So for now we can close this down, and all you have to do is install Node.js and Postman. The rest of them will install after we've installed Node.js. So once you have Node.js installed, go to the directory you're going to be creating your RESTful API in, and the first thing you want to do is say npm init to start a new node, or a new node package. Basically, this is going to generate you a package.json file which Node needs to know what dependencies you're using and so forth. So let's run this, and as you can see here, ask for a package name. I'm going to call it a user manager. The version is going to be 1, which is perfect, and the description will say a user management system, or a RESTful API user management for a user management system. There we go. Entry point, I'm going to call this surfer.js because it's my preference. You can name this whatever you want, just make sure you know what that is. Test command, we don't need one. Git repository, you don't need one. Keywords, author, you can put your own name here. I'm going to put mine, and I'm going to also put my email. There we go, let's crack on. And the license, we're going to stick with ISC. You can do anything you want, whatever you want to do. So now we have that. If we list, you'll see we have a package.json file. So let's open up this directory in our favorite text editor. Mine is Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open this up in a new little window here so it's bigger and easier to read. Now let's zoom in on this. As you can see here, it comes with a few things. The first thing is a name, which is the name of your package. If you remember, basically everything you saw as set up is all here. Now, one of the only things you need to do is we need to set up a new script. But first, let's install some new packages. So in here, if we press Control in VS Code, if we press Control Alt T, it brings up a terminal. And what we could do with this terminal is type in here npm I, which stands for install, and we can type in some packages to install. And I'm going to say Express, Mongoose, and for now that is it. I think they're the only two we need right now. So if we hit enter, that's just going to install some dependencies. Express and Mongoose, and Express is the web framework we'll be using with Node. It's a Node web framework, and Mongoose again is our let's say relate or our database structuring system. And actually they're installed, so let's clear this. Now we need to install something else. We're going to use -D, which stands for def, and that means what we're about to install is a def dependency. And we're going to install NodeMon. What NodeMon does is allow you to run your surfer, and when you make changes to your code, it will auto update for you, so you don't have to restart your Node instance again. So let's hit enter and allow NodeMon to install. While that's installing, let's for starters, let's leave that there. But let's open up, or let's create our surfer.js file. Now, in here, we want to require a few files. So we're going to say const express is equal to require, and we're going to say express. We're then going to say const mongoose is equal to require, and we're going to say mongoose. Oh, that's mongoose. We want mongoose. There we go. Oh, and just to make it clear, this isn't I'm not showing you how to do every single thing to install, and one thing you will need to install is called MongoDB. You need to install it and you can run it as a service. Mine is currently running. If I type MongoD, you'll see it shuts down because it's already running. But if I type in Mongo, you'll see it works. And to install this, I recommend using Homebrew. You can find a tutorial on Google by just typing in how to install MongoDB via Homebrew on Google, and it would probably be I believe it's the top result. It's by Treehouse. I'll probably leave it in the description, but if I do not, just remind me to leave that in the description. It's super easy tutorial to follow. Once you've installed it, you'll basically, once you follow everything, you'll be able to type in Mongo in your console, and that will work. And that means everything we're about to do will work for you at the same time. So now we've got that down, let's now continue on. So we've got Express and we've got Mongoose. Let's now create the app, which is we call Express. And there's a few things we can do in this, but first let's go back to our package.json, and where you see we've got NodeMon, let's create a script called start, which is going to start our development surfer. And in here we're going to say NodeMon, and we're going to give it the name of our file we want it to serve, and that is surfer.js. Hit save, and now if we go back to this terminal and we type in npm start and we hit enter, as you'll see here, it runs NodeMon, which is running our surfer. And actually it says clean exit. That's because it's not doing anything. If we log here, hello world, and hit save, you'll see we get hello world inside of our terminal. So let's get on to the more heavy duty stuff. So, oh sorry, Mac dictator thing popped up on my screen. So the first thing we want to do is we want to set up the database. We then want to set up some middleware, and then we want to, well, we don't want to, we're not going to do this after middleware, but we'll need to set up the controllers later on. We then need to set up some routes, and finally we're going to start the surfer. So what we're going to do in the routes is we're going to define the actual routes, but we're not going to set up how they work. We're going to use the controllers here to set up how the routes works. We're using the MVC approach, which stands for Model View Controller, and we will set up some models and some views soon. But the first thing we want to do is create a database, and to do that, we need to say Mongoose, and as long as you have MongoDB correctly installed, you'll be able to do this. And we'll say connect, which means we're going to connect, and this is the typical URL for your Mongo. But if you go to your terminal and you type in Mongo, at the top here it'll give you your URI right there, and that is the that is the URL you want to use inside of here. You could also then specify the database name where you put / and you give it a database name, and for this one it's going to be called user manager. You could then either do a callback in here to catch an error, or you could leave this as this. and then you could say mongoose.on, and oh, that's not on, .on connected or connection, and then you could run a function once you've connected. But in our case, we're going to use a promise, and we're going to use then, and I'm just going to set this to an arrow function, and console.log connected to database ... And I'm going to bring this onto one line because I don't think I need 2 lines. There you go. And then under this, we're going to do a catch, and we're going to say error, and we're going to say console.error, or if. Is it if error, or can I just say console.error? Oh, that's not a dot, Tyler. .error error. Hit save. If we go back, as you can see here, it's connected to database, but it's given us a depreciation warning, and basically to fix that, we go into our connection, we will put a comma after this and pass through this use new URL parser. It's just something you need to do because the old way is depreciated, however you want to say it. And if we go back, actually that error is gone, and now it just says connected to database, which is exactly what we wanted. So now we're connected, we can do a few different things. But firstly, we want to set up some middleware. And what middleware does is, it's basically stuff what happens before your routes. So middleware is after starting the server, but before entering a route, such as, let's say, /user/create. You could do something before that by going app.use, and you could give it the path, so you'd say /create user, for example, and then you set a function before to do something. So you would say, before we get to create user, do this. But for now, we don't want to do that. We're going to basically say, we're going to set up a way of passing JSON in without getting any errors inside of Express. So we're going to say app.use, and we're going to say express.json. And that is basically going to allow us to use JSON. We can also use form data by going app.use express.url encoded, and we can also say extended true. And what that just allows us to use form data. So let's say when we create a user, it's all from a form. This is what will allow us to do that. And they're the only 2 pieces of middleware we need right now. But if you was to be building a big full-on system, you'd probably need some security middleware, some logging in, authentication middleware, loads of different things to stop you from having any issues. We're going to do controllers after we've done the routes. Or should we do it before? I think we need it before. But first, let's say app.listen. So we're going to start our server now, and we're going to give it a port. So we need to give it a port. I'm going to use the default of 3000, and I'm then going to use an arrow function to say console.log server has started on port 3000, hit save. And now if we go back to our hacker view or terminal, you'll see it says server has started on port 3000 connected to database. Now that's great. Let's create a new folder, and in this folder we're going to call this controllers, or no, we're going to call this models. And in models, what you would do is set up how your database structure needs to be. And in this models, we're only going to have one file because it's a very simple REST API, but it's going to be called user model.js. And in here, we're going to basically bring through Mongoose by saying require, and we're going to say Mongoose. And after that, we also want to create a schema. So we're going to use const schema, and all we say here is mongoose.schema. And that will allow us to use a schema. Now, further down here, we need to define our schema, our schematics for our model. And what a schematics is basically the structure of how you want your Mongoose, your Mongo database to be, your collection you want it to be. And in this case, we're going to say const user schema is equal to new schema, and then you pass through some parentheses, and inside the parentheses some curly braces or an object notation, and we will now write whatever we want. And this is going to be some basic syntax. So let's say we want to give it a forename. So we'll type in forename and then we'll give it a type, and we can say string, and that would be a valid type. We could then say surname and say it's going to be a string. We could then say email, and again, an email would be equal to a string, a password to a string. I'm trying to think of something what isn't a string. Let's say age, and that will be a number. And let's say not all of this is required, but you wanted email and password to be required. Instead of just passing string, you could pass an object, and this object will take a few values. First one being type, and what the type is for example, it's the string, the number, what you actually want it to be. The second parameter you can pass is required, and the required one basically says if it is needed or not. If this is set to true, then you cannot create one without it. You can't create a new user without it. You could also do something such as default. So let's say if it was, for example, your a team, you could set the default team to, let's say, be web team or something similar. But for now we don't need a default, but we will say required is true. We're also going to do the same with the password, because there's no point in making the email required if the password is not. And the rest of this we'll leave as not required. But after age, we are going to write in here our team, and this will say a type of string. And that will be it for our schema. It's very simple schema. In a bigger app, you'd probably have a lot more. Your password would be hashed. You'd create some middleware or some pre-save event that basically before you save a new schema, you would hash the password and make it secure and stuff. But in this case, we're not going to. Again, this is mainly focusing on the RESTful API. So once we've created a user schema, we next need to actually create the model. And to do that, we actually have to export the model. So we want to say module.export. And we want to set this equal to mongoose.model, and then we want to give the model a name, and this model is a user model. So we're going to say user, and then we want to give it a schema. So we're going to pass through our user schema we've just created. And now this is all complete. So now how you'd use this is you'd go into a controller or somewhere you need to use the schema, and you would require it, like we're requiring Mongoose up here. And let's do that. So back in our root directory, we're going to create a new folder called controllers, and inside controllers we're going to create a file called user control.js, and we're going to hit enter. And inside the user control, we basically want to get our user model. So we're going to say user model is equal to require, and we're going to basically go back a directory, go to our models and our user model. Now with the user model, we can do things like this: user model.find, and let's say let users equal, and then this would find us all the users which are inside our user model collection. And we could do things like, instead of find, we could find one, so it would be just a user. You could do find one and update, or you could do one called save, which is basically a way of saving the model. If it already exists, it will overwrite the current model. But let's crack on. So in our controller, we want to do a module.export, and we want to set this equal to an object which is going to have in some methods, as you call them. And the first method we're going to have is create, which we're going to set to an arrow function. And in Express, you pass through, with every root controller, you need to pass through two things. One is rec, which stands for request, but we're going to do for short rec. And the second one is response, but this is also known as res. Now inside of our create method, we want to say Mongo, or we want to say user model dot create, and well, that's not exactly how it works. you want to say let user equal rec.body. So we're going to create from our body of our we could do it actually a better way. We'll set it equal to an object, and we're going to give it the values which are inside of our user model. So let's copy this in our user. Let's paste this in. Now our forename will be rec.body.forename. Our surname will be rec.body.surname without the I. And again, the email will be literally the same, just rec.body.email. Password will be rec.body.password. The age is going to be rec.body.age, and the team will be rec.body.team. Now we've got this user here, we now need to create an actual model for this. So we want to say let user, or to do, so this is just an array, but now let's turn it into an actual model. So we'll say new user model, and we're going to pass through some parentheses, and we're going to delete that parenthesis on that side and place it on the other side. Now what we have essentially done is saying we want to create a new user model, so a new user from the user model, so this model we're using, and we're basically saying we want to create this. So underneath user, once we've got the user model set, we want to say user.save, and what this does is basically saves or updates, if it already exists, the model here which we are creating. So this is going to save into our database all this information, just straight up. That's all it is. It's that simple. But we want to catch this, so we want to say, oh, that's not what I want to do. We want to say .then, and after .then we want to say result, and then we want to go if, well, actually we want to say res.json, and then we're going to pass some JSON back. We're going to say success, and we're going to set it to true, and then we're going to say the result is equal to result. We then want to have a catch function which catch an error, and all this is going to say is res.json, and we're going to say success equal to false, result is equal to error, and that is going to be our error handler. Now if we was to try this, this isn't going to do anything. The reason is because we need to include it inside of our main surfer.js file. Now let's create a new controller. So we're going to say user control is equal to require /controller/user control, and that is it. That's all we need to actually request it. Secondly, or finally, we need to add in the root for the create API. So there's multiple different ways you can do. So you can say app.get, app.post, app.set, I believe it's one, app.put, app.delete. The one we're going to be focusing on for this part is app.post, because we're going to be making a post request to our user controller for creating. So in here we're going to say /API/user/create, and that's going to be our API route to actually call this. We want to then say user control.create, and that is all we need to do. Now this is set up, ready to go. If we go back to if we now come to our desktop and we open up Postman, which is our again way of testing that API, we need to now put in the API route up here. So we're going to say it's a post request, and it's going to HTTP, hello latest version, localhost 3000 /API/user/create. And now if we hit send, we're going to get this error. And the reason we get this error it's because it's telling us what is needed here. So as you can see, it says success false, and it says, because we didn't pass anything through, it's saying errors, email, message, path, email is required. Because it's required, you need this validation error. It says password, and it says password is required, because again, we needed the password. And it says down here, the message is equal to user validation failed, email path, email is required, password path, password is required, and the name is validation error. So you could use this information in, let's say, your app or your web app or whatever you're using this API for, to show a user on the front end a error saying this is what you need. You need to add in this. And let's fix this now. So even though we're erroring, let's fix it. So now in body, we're going to click raw, and we're going to set this equal to JSON, because we're going to be sending JSON back to the server. So the body is what is sent back to as a request. As you remember, in our user controller, we do rec.body, which stands for request.body. And basically, we want to send back exactly what they asked for. So they want a forename, and it's going to be my forename. It's going to need a surname, and this is going to be my surname. They need an email address, which is going to be equal to my email address. They need a password, and it's going to be like my most secure password ever. To be fair, I don't think most people would guess that anyway. Let's say my age is 21. And that's true, by the way, I'm not lying about that. And our team is going to be the software engineering, or we'll call it the engineer team. Now, if we hit send, let's make this a little bigger, you'll see we get a success of true, and then we get our result back. And what the result is it's the new object we have just created inside of our database. So if you see here, we've got a success true, the result it's been passed back, and it says the ID. So now we have an ID for that user. We now have the forename, the surname, email address, password, age, and the team they are on. And this underscore version is something what Mongo does, and I believe it's just the version of this this collection, but I have no idea what it does, so you can ignore it. So that is the create route. So now we've created people. How do we know if it's actually worked? Well, if we come into our terminal here, and let's move that out of the way so it's not blinding us with its majestic bright white colors. You know what? Let's just minimize it for now because it's in the way. It's in the way regardless. So yeah, to test if it works, we're going to say Mongo. We're then going to say show DBs, and this is how we show our databases. As you can see, we've got a user manager database down there. So we can say use user-manager. Now we're using that manager, we can now say show collections, and it will show us the collections for our user manager. Now we want to say db.users because we're saying the database we're currently in .users.find. And this is going to show us all of our databases, but it's going to show us it really messy. To fix that, we could say pretty, and basically that's going to make it display a bit better. And if we hit enter, as you can see here, there's our object. So we know it's worked because it's showing up inside of our database. And that is all you need to create a user. You could probably do some validation in it so you can check before it's even sent if email and password is already being sent across. If not, you can send your own custom error, but I would this is just as good as long as you have some way of dealing with that on the front end. So once we've created a user, we then want to be able to update the user. And this is quite a similar approach. So we want to say, basically what we want to do first is we need to find the current user inside of the database. So what we want to do is say user model.find one by ID, or just find by ID, that's it. So find by ID, and then we pass through the ID. So we're going to say rec.body dot underscore ID. We then want to say the callback. So we're actually going to use a promise here, and we're going to say dot then, and then we're going to say result. And once we have the result, we're going to say if result. So if it's not empty, or actually we'll say if not result, we're going to say console or rest.send or rest.json, and we're going to say success false, result user does not exist. And that's a valid error you would be checking for. You'll check if your user actually exists before you update an empty user. And if it does exist, actually we're going to name this user here because we're getting back the user. So if he does exist, we're then going to say user dot, and then let's say we want to update it. So user dot, or we'll say user is equal to rec.body, because our rec.body will be equal to our new user item. And now if we go down and we say user.save, it will now save this user as the same one, and we are going to basically use the same then and catch as we did up here, and we're going to hit save. So let's go back to Postman. So let's reopen up Postman. There we go. And if we now copy this, if we duplicate tab, and instead we create a, wait, there's an update, right? So there's also another, is there an update thing in here? No. Yeah, we'll do a post request. It'll be another post, and it will take the exact same stuff, but we're going to update it this time. So if we go back to our surfer, we need to actually create the root, and we're going to say user update, and this one's going to say update. So this should now work. So if we go in here and we say, actually, Tyler is 22 now. I know you would probably pass through a date of birth and not an actual age, so you can actually work this out without having to worry and change it every year for every single user, but this gives us a good way of doing it. So now Tyler's 22. And you know what? He wants to update his password to have some numbers in it. So now if we go send, as you can see, it says success false, user does not exist. So that, at least that works. But I think the find by ID failed us. So I'm actually going to do find one. And I'm going to say, oh, actually, the reason it failed is because we didn't pass back our ID. And normally you would have your ID if you're updating a user. And as you can see here, this is our ID. So let's copy this and let's paste it above our forename. There we go. But now we have our ID. So if you didn't have your ID, you would get user does not exist, which means that it's working. But now if we send, something has errored, I've just noticed. User.save is not a function. Oh, did I not? Oh, my bad. So when we create this new user, we basically want to say user is equal to a new user model, and then we pass through rec.body, because this will be our updated body, and then we do user.save. So this will update our whole user. This is kind of a messy way to do it. There is easier ways to update. You can update just the stuff you've changed, and I'll show you how to do that in 1 minute. So now we've got that, and we've got this. Now let's see if this will update. So if we hit send, there we go. Success false, result, driver true, Mongo error, duplication key error, users. Oh, wait, what? Okay, 1 second. Why are we getting that error? Because we shouldn't be getting that error, because we're just updating the user. Save normally updates. So if let's open up Chrome, we need some debugging to do here. And we say Mongoose save to update. Oh, that's not how you spell update. Mongoose, difference between save and using update. So I believe you should be able to use update to. The main difference is that with save, you already have an object in your client-side code or had to retrieve the data from the server side before you are writing it back. So yeah, so you see what I've done where I've got the whole thing and I'm just saving the whole thing. On the other hand, update does not require the data to be loaded to the client from the server. All of the interactions happen on the server side without retrieving the client. So .update can be very efficient in this way when you are adding context to the thing. Important note, does not write back the whole thing. It differs the document and only sends the fields that have actually changed. So it's okay to be used to make a tiny change on the database as with update. Right, okay, that makes sense. So let's say if we want to update this now. So let's minimize this. So what we're doing here is we're saving it, but what it's saying is you want to find update. So also use mod.update, and I'm guessing this would be now changed to _id, which is equal to rec.body._id. And then you would need to pass through the stuff you are updating. And I'm guessing the stuff what else we use down? Okay, so now we want to say rec.body, and then we use the .then, which should then pass back a user. So let's see what this does now. Rest.json user. So we've passed through the ID and the body. So if we hit send, and n-modified 1 OK. So that means it has updated. So now if we go to is this our Mongo? It is. Let's minimize this because it's making it really hard to read. I really need to fix my terminal. So now if we do the same thing again, as you can see, it has updated to 22. And our password has also updated. So that is how I believe now if we went back to our postman and we only wanted to update, let's say, the email, we've changed email address, we just have the ID, and because you need the ID regardless, because you need to know which one you're updating. But let's say you just want to update the ID. My new ID is engineer@tylerpotts.co.uk, and we hit send. That'll say OK modified, and now if we find that in there, as you can see, it's only updated. It's really hard to read, god damn it. Get out of the way. The only thing you can see that it's updated is the email address where it says engineer@tylerpotts.co.uk. There you go. So that is the only thing that's updated, but it's kept everything else. So the save method, I believe, can save still or update stuff, but I believe I did it wrong. Which isn't. Oh, hello, where are we going? No, don't do that. Don't do that. So yeah, that's how you use update anyway. So we got there in the end. I made an error. I hope you guys like when I leave the errors in, because it shows that I'm human too. We're going to use a catch here too, just so we can get an error. And we'll say rest.json success false result error. That seems right, yep. And then we've got a catch just in case. So let's say if we wanted to say this is not engineer, but this is back to hello, and we update. It then passes back saying this is modified and OK 1, which I believe 1 stands for true, which means OK is successful. So what happens if we want it to send us the new updated body back? I guess then we would probably use a save method, but for now we won't worry about that. This is a basic CRUD. So we've got our update function. Now let's say we want to now retrieve the data, right? We want to say retrieve the rec and rest from our our user. Now this one is super simple because all we do is we say user model dot find, and then what we do after we've done the find is say then, and we could we say result, and then here we are. So we'll say if result is not this, so if there's no result, then we'll say rest.json success false, result is no results found, because that means nothing was found. And else we'll now just put in here rest.json success true, and we'll say result is equal to result. And then we'll do a catch again, and we'll say if there's an error, we want to catch this error and say rest.json success false and result is error. And I think I've done that. Oh, I missed out the semicolon or the colon. There we go. Now we have that. Now this is all we need to do for retrieve. So let's go to our server. Let's create this. And this one is going to be a get request because we don't need to actually pass anything through, and we're getting data. So the logical thing to do is use a get request. Now let's create a new API here. Let's just quickly copy this, paste it in, and change this to retrieve. Now we shouldn't have to pass in any body or headers, but we should be able to hit send, and there we go, we get the data, and this now passes back an array of data. Let's say we want to create multiple people, so now we're going to say who can we say, John Snow, and this will be King. Oh, he can't be King of the North. Rob Stark is always King. I would say John at Targaryen. Oh god, that's a spoiler. Oh, I should have said spoiler alert. .co.uk. And the password can be Ghost. We all know Ghost. And his age is now 23. And he is a part of the Night's Watch. Yep, I like Game of Thrones. Create. And there we go, it is now created. And now if we go back to retrieve and we do this again, as you can see, we get both data. So we get Jon Snow and we get myself in an array. So that's how the retrieve would work. And again, if you was to hook this up to, let's say, a Vue front end, you would use this API to get, let's say, your data. You would then use a a fee for loop to loop through and basically display all this data. So you'd set something what shows the for name. You'd probably do it in a table or a list view, and you'd say a table with your forename, surname, email address. You wouldn't put your password out in the open because you know that's not really something you should do. Maybe your age and the team you're with, and then you'd add some filters where you could filter per team and stuff. You could also do that in your API where you filter the data before it comes to you, but again, you can also not. It's faster to do the filtering on the front end because you don't have to make enough a call. It also saves data, but at the same time, a correct way to do it would probably be making a call, but again, it waits a call because it'll be more secure to do it through a call. Anyway, now the final one we want to do, actually, let's not put that there yet. The final one we want to do is we want to delete a user. So let's say delete. Now we'll say rec res. And this one is quite simple again. We say user model dot remove. Is it remove one or just remove? And then we'd pass the ID, which we would say rec dot body dot ID, because we'll pass through the ID. And then that is all we need to do. So then we'll say dot then result is equal to res dot JSON, and we'll say success is true and the result is result. And I'm not going to add anything else in for that. I just want to show you how this would work. So now if we remove a user, so we would make a delete request to delete and delete a user. And now if we go back to Postman and we get Jon Snow's ID and we create a new request which say delete request, and we'll say HTTP, we use that, but it'll be user/delete. And now we'll add in a body, and the only thing we want to pass through, that's not, we'll want to paste this. The only thing we need to pass through here is the ID, which is this. And now if we click send, you'll see it says success true, result n, okay, 1, and delete count 1. So that means it was actually successful. So if we go back to our retrieve and we retrieve, you'll see we no longer get Jon Snow. That's because he has been deleted from the database. So if we go back to our users here, we can set up the, let's say this, because if there's no result, that means no user was found with the ID. And that means it won't delete anyone. And then we want to do a catch, and we'll say error. And we're actually just going to use this same one here because it just needs to be the same. And that will do our error handling for us. Again, on your front end, you would check if this success was equal to true or false, and then you would decide whether you display a good or a bad result. So success true means you would return something which was good. So for example, you got your data was successful and it's come back perfectly, and you get your result. But let's say if you don't find any results, you send it wasn't successful, and normally you would know what request you're sending, so you would know how to handle it when you get errors. Other than that, guys, that is how you create a NodeJS Express MongoDB Mongoose API, RESTful API to be exact, because all this does is a CRUD implementation of stuff. It doesn't do any modification or anything like that. And it's really simple. So we learned today how to use NodeJS middleware such as ExpressJS and URL encoded. We didn't actually show off URL encoded, but we did show off JSON because we are passing through JSON, as you can see here, rest.json, and we're also retrieving JSON from our request. And also, if we did send it through a form, we could use express URL encoded, and that would do the same. Well, we won't use it. We don't actually notice what happens here. So if we was just to stop this, something would just not work, and we won't actually know why. But this is why. This would basically, adding in the middleware, basically fixes issues which you don't really notice. And one of them is passing JSON. So that is that. And as you can see, we've got our user controller. So if you were making a bigger system, let's say it had a user controller, it had, let's say, a holiday controller, so where you'd control the holiday forms and stuff, and an authentication controller, you would bring all those in, and you'd have loads of different routes. You'd probably set up some sort of route handler, or like an initialization, so you set up all the routes in a function sort of thing. And you'd also probably have an API router instead of just this actually using from the home route, but you could actually set up an actual router. I'm not going to go into it right now, but again, that's something you can do if you want to look into that. Other than that, guys, I think we have gone over everything we need to do. It's a CRUD system. It's very simple, and it's in its basic form, should I say. And that is everything we need to know. I hope you enjoyed the errors I left in, because I'm not going to remove them. I'm just going to leave this as complete raw footage of what I've done, so you can see everything from start to finish. If there's any errors I made, you would have seen them and been able to react with me and understood the errors with me. So other than that, guys, I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, leave a thumbs up. It really helps me continue on with what I'm doing. And if you want to see more, then hit that subscribe button, because I try to upload daily from Monday to Friday, take the weekends off, Saturday and Sunday to relax, although I end up recording Monday's video on Sunday and so forth, so you get what it is. But yeah, subscribe, leave a like on the video, and if you have any feedback, drop it in the comments, or you can come and join us at our Discord server. The link is in the description. The code for this repository will be on GitHub, and the link will be in the description of this video. Other than that, guys, I want to say a massive thank you to all my Patreons who have supported me. You guys help me continue doing what I do and to upgrade my equipment and you guys have been there every step of the way, so I thank you all. You're all amazing. Other than that, guys, thank you for watching, and peace out.
Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move along. Push myself